Okay, so in this video, I want to talk about how it is that one sets up a truth table. It'll be valuable to know this before you dive into anything else involving truth tables, such as how to evaluate arguments or how to test whether sets of statements are consistent or whatever, all of which I will be uploading videos on. But here I really just want to teach you the practical skill of how it is that you set up a truth table. Okay, so there are two main things that I want to talk about. One is the number of rows that go into a truth table, right? And the other is how it is that one arranges the initial set of truth values that go into a truth table. Before I cover either of those, let me just go ahead and draw up a truth table really quickly. So here's a common use for a truth table. So you might have some letters, then you'll have some premises. There we go. And then there will be a conclusion. So this is a truth table that you might set up when you're evaluating an argument for validity, which we're not going to do right now. The only thing I wanted to show is that there's a special structure to this, right? So all of your initial atomic statements, however many atomic statements show up in the premises and conclusions, that's how many you need to put at the beginning of this truth table, right? So if your premises contain the letters A, B, and C, then you're going to set up A, B, and C first. That's going to be the first part of your truth table. And then the conclusion always comes after this, double line, and that's just to mark it off. But like I said, I'm not going to show you how to evaluate this stuff right now. This is just how you might see some truth tables set up. Truth tables can be used for other things too, so they might not be used to evaluate arguments, in which case you're not going to see this double line and you won't be dealing with premises. You'll just be dealing with statements in order to test to see whether there's a contradiction or whether they're consistent or whether it's a tautology or what have you. All of these are concepts that should sound familiar if you're far enough into your course. The thing that I care about for this video is this initial setup right here. This is the thing that has students tend to get tripped up on. So let me erase the stuff that doesn't matter. And let me give you three examples. So here's a truth table that contains just one letter. Here's one that contains two. And here's one that contains three. Okay, so first let's talk about how many rows it is that you need to have. So there's an actual formula for this, right? You need to have 2 to the n rows, where n stands for how many atomic statements you have. So if you have one atomic statement, that would be 2 to the 1, 2 rows. If you have 2 atomic statements, that would be 2 to the 2, 4 rows. If you have 3 atomic statements, that would be 2 to the 3, 8 rows. And that's actually going to increment like that, right? So if you have 4 atomic statements, that's 16 rows. 5 atomic statements, that's 32 rows. And you can see very quickly that this starts to get a little unwieldy, although most of your professors would never give you truth tables with more than 4 atomic statements. It would be kind of cruel to make you work on a truth table that has 5 or more atomic statements. Okay, if you don't like thinking about it in terms of this formula, which I think it's a nifty formula, then you can just memorize, right? If it's 1, it's 2. If it's 2 atomic statements, it's 4. If it's 3 atomic statements, it's 8. And it just doubles, right? So you start with 2 for a single atomic statement, and for every additional atomic statement, the number of rows doubles. So if you have 2 atomic statements, you've doubled it. Now there are 4. If you have 3 atomic statements, you've doubled it. So now there are 8. If you have 4 atomic statements, you've doubled it. So there are 16, 32, 64, 128, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second is the arrangement of truth values. Here's what's important about how to arrange these. It's arbitrary in the sense that it actually doesn't really matter whether you want to start with writing false at the top, true at the bottom, what have you, right? What matters is that you cover every single possible combination of truth values for the number of atomic statements that you have. So if you have just one atomic statement, you're only going to have 2 possible truth values, true or false. Now, had you written it with false first and true second, does that really matter? Well, you haven't done anything wrong, right? There's no rule that says that you have to start with the top being true, but there is a convention, right? And the convention is to always start with the top row having all of the true values, right? And then you'll have your false values a little bit later on. Here's also just a word of advice. Stick to the conventions of your professors. Grading these things is an enormous pain. So you want to make your professor's life as easy as possible. You want to be in their good graces, right? That's how you get. Your grade shouldn't depend on whether they like you, but it certainly will hurt you, right? Or it can't help you if you're just doing whatever you want with these, right? Okay, so if you have 2 atomic statements, right, then you're going to have 4 rows. And this is where the question comes in. Okay, so then how do I fill those out? Here's the trick, right? And this trick will work every time. You'll always get exactly the right combination of truth values, right? So that you're always meeting the convention. Start with the innermost letter before anything else, right? So if you have 2 atomic statements, A and B, the innermost is B, right? That's the closest one to everything else that's going to happen in the truth table. Start there. You know that you're going to have 4 truth values. All you have to do for the innermost atomic statement is to alternate true, false, until you've filled all of the truth values. So because we have 2, we know there are going to be 4 rows, right? 2 atomic statements, that's 4 rows. True, false, true, false. That's every possible combination at least once we're finished, right? But that fills out the 4 rows, and all you did was alternate. And then take a step back, right, to the previous atomic statement, and you're just going to double, right? So if you did true, false, then for the next one you're going to write true, true, false, true, true, false, until you fill out all of the rows, right? And then the next atomic statement, you'll do the same thing. You'll double how many consecutive truths and falsehoods you have. So it'll be true, 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 false, right? So here, true, true, false. And notice, if you did that, we know that there are 2 atomic statements, so we know there have to be 2 to the n rows, that's 4, right? If you did it this way, you will cover every single possible combination of truth values. Notice, A and B can either both be true, both be false, or you can have A be true and B false, or A false and B true. And that's it. There's really no other combination, right? If you try to write a random assortment of truths and false, you'll find the row, right, that corresponds to that. So this covers every single combination of truth values. Now let's try it with 3 atomic statements, right? So first, let's establish how many rows we need. We have 3 atomic statements, right? 2 to the 3, that's going to be 8. Go to the innermost letter, in this case it's C, and then for 8 rows, just alternate true and false. True, false, true, false, true, false, true, false. That's 8 rows of alternating truth and false. Go back 1 atomic statement, and now write 2 consecutive truths followed by 2 consecutive falsehoods followed by 2, so on and so forth, right? So true, true, false, true, true, false. And then 1 further back, you do the same thing again, right? So in this one, your consecutive truths were 2 of them, your consecutive falsehoods were 2 of them. Here you're going to have 4 consecutive truths followed by 4 consecutive falsehoods, right? So true, 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 false. And again, if you did this, if you followed those steps, this will cover every single possible combination of truth values. And you will be ready to utilize the rest of your truth table for whatever it is that you need to use it for, be it evaluating an argument for validity, or if you're just testing out some statements to see whether they're consistent or what have you. Okay, so that's everything that I wanted to talk about. That's how you set up a truth table. That's everything there is to it. So stick around. I'll be uploading videos on how to evaluate the various logical connectives pretty soon. All right, I'll see you around.